Show 5, Volume 1, from DJ Joe 2022. First up, Connect Lo-Fi Remix. Welcome back to Build Theory. I'm Aurian Archive, and pardon me as I cough, sniffle, and otherwise suffer through a substantial amount of pollen that has turned everything yellow. And antihistamines can only go so far. Alright, so obviously on screen, I have gotten the energy electric brute to level 50, and now it's just time to finish slotting her all the way up. I'm just kind of leaving her in a task force mode for now. We'd already picked up Gloom. And oh, closer. Closer. Step a little bit closer. Okay, so I was at 39, so I'm at 40. Lightning reflexes, so there was one change that I made kind of in progress. I changed lightning reflexes to a flight. Alright, and energy transfer, we need to add a slot 2 to bring it up to 5. We need to go ahead and fill in health. Fly, we will be unslotting that and going back to fly endurance. Let's look on Power Crash. Where was Power Crash? We need one more slot in Power Crash. Okay, evasive maneuvers is... oh, we've already used up all our slots. Okay, 41, where we will be picking up Dark Obliteration. To the next level. And hovers and fly are only getting each. Evasive maneuvers is getting 2. Kick is only getting 1. Tough is getting on to 43. Finish up tough with 3. Weave is actually getting a lot. Alright, we are at 44. Oops, no. Leadership, maneuvers. Since I'm not getting into some of the soft caps until 44, I really should move Taunt further down into the build. Could move lightning reflexes down, that'll move maneuvers up, that'll give me a soft cap earlier, or I can move Taunt up. And okay, so I actually need maneuvers and agility radial to be in the soft caps. Do I? Agility off. Where was that on melee? It's actually really close on melee. There's just not a whole lot that's actually... I don't think that'll actually change anything. It's like I would like to have taunt earlier. Because that would be useful if I had taunt, say, down in Katie Hannon Task Force. Slots and enhancement slots, all the angel slots. Alright. It actually gets me to where I now have taunt down later. I still have all my resist. Can I do the same with hasten? Just move everything down. Maneuvers down. Weave down. Alright. And then we'll... Alright, and I had Kismet on Weave. But if I put Kismet on Hover, then I always need to be running Hover, but I have Hover pretty early. Now, what I'm thinking is Hasten doesn't do me a lot of good until the IOs are at full strength and after I get energized. So what I'm thinking is swapping Hasten and Evasive Maneuvers and running Kismet on Evasive Maneuvers. Because although I need Hover to be in defensive soft caps, I'll probably be running Evasive Maneuvers. Yeah, the thing is, Evasive Maneuvers also give me some anti-knock protection, which may make it easier to, say, tank in Katie Hannon Task Force. I'm now thinking moving Hasten earlier. Moving Hasten down low, kick tough. Alright, just put some of my soft cap survivability earlier, but in the lower ranges, soft cap probably should not be as important. So this is, I think, what we'll go with. This is really an R1 Bravo. And we probably should update this. Energy, Elec, R1 Bravo. It's not quite an LCMS, because we actually moved our soft cap target level didn't actually change, because we still need the powers maneuvers, which is still at a high end, and we still needed agility to reach defensive soft caps. So none of that actually changed, but our power selection changed to give us a little bit more utility across the mid-range, because now we can bring a taunt into positron, a taunt into synapse, a taunt into basically in all the task forces that are available. We'll at least have a taunt, not that on a brute at those levels I would really want to be the taunter. Sometimes you run what you got, right? Slots and enhancements, auto range slots. So we will be doing a respecification to finish out the now rearranged slots. Evasive maneuvers is picking up 4 now. And the other thing is, which was I noticed here, evasive maneuvers still works even if you are not flying. You still get the immobilization resist, a knock resist, and that actually looks like a resistance to knock, which is very important. It's one thing to have knock protection, like grounded gives me knock protection, but grounded doesn't actually give me any knock resistance. So anything that overcomes that knock protection will still send me flying. Evasive maneuvers gives me knock resistance. So this does back up what I've gotten grounded. This actually synergizes significantly better than I was expecting. But the knock limitations on grounded and static shield as another anti-mez. Static shield works in the air, and grounded I think was adjusted so that you did not have to be in contact with the ground for it to give you all of its buffs. Alright, so okay, that's there's our R1 Bravo. We didn't change enough powers to really make it an R2. We just changed where the powers are and swapped one proc around, so we'll go with R1 Bravo. Now let's check our slotting. We still Gloom is going all the way out. Alright, 46. And Power Crash 5, Energy Transfer 5. Dark Obliteration was going all the way out. Another power. Did we take maneuvers already? Okay, there's maneuvers. Alright, we'll go ahead and pick up Taunt. You know, that brief moment when you realize that you've skipped Darkest Night, which... Okay, is there anything I can drop to pick up Darkest Night? Not really. Except for Lightning Reflexes. But Lightning Reflexes gives me recharge and helps me resist slows. So I don't have a toggle debuff. That's frustrating. How did I get this far and not realize I hadn't picked it up? Thing is, I need hover. I need hover to get to evasive maneuvers. And evasive maneuvers give me the knock resist, some more mobile eye protection, and flight control. Weave just gives me way too much maneuvers. Alright, what's my base on maneuver? What's my base on weave? My base on weave is 3.75. What's my base on hover? 1.88. 2.63. I need tough also to make up for the extra resist here. The only one that's really easy to drop would be lightning reflexes. Now, lightning reflexes, oof. Alright, let's lock off Energize. Alright. Energize is not quite perma. Hasten is not quite perma. Hasten's even less perma with lightning reflexes off. Now if I could drop weave. Thing is, if I drop weave, tough, and kick. If I drop weave, tough, and kick, and I pick up combat jumping, still need a resist. Okay, I could pick up Power Surge and save the resist. Resistance. And I know I'm doing this outside the camera where you can't see what's going on. Because I didn't think I'd actually be doing a cross-build backport or Power Surge off. Woof. That really craters my smashing lethal resist from 72 to 54. And even with agility on, I'm in soft cap to melee, but at 42 on smashing lethal and 43 on fire cold. That's a lot of defense to make up, especially when I've already got all the so trying to do that and pick up Darkest Night. Trying to do that to pick up Darkest Night. Okay, and Darkest Night doesn't actually have any slots in it, so it's not even really useful as a debuff. It's only useful as a taunt aggro. I lost a substantial amount of survivability to get it. Any other paths I could take? Power Crash is too useful now. Energy transfers, all the attacks I got are too useful. Because of the synchronization in them. Yeah, come back to the only one that would be realistic to drop would be Lightning Reflexes. Lightning Reflexes means I lose a metric amount of recharge. Because that's giving me 20% recharge right there. It's not enough to make anything perma. And I can't really drop Hover because I need Hover to unlock evasive maneuvers. And if I take air superiority instead, well, I've still got, that doesn't free me up a power slot. Alright. Alright. Kind of banging my head against a brick wall here. I'm not coming up with any good way to get Darkest Night. Okay, why is Darkest Night so important? Darkest Night is important because it is a toggle aggro anchor. What that means is, and I've demonstrated this before on... Actually, we will do a quick window swap. We need to do a zone change on you. Let's click this back on. And real quick, what's our movement look like? Flying speed. Okay. Turning on evasive maneuvers, you can just obviously see that I went to 86 from 74. So I am picking up a tremendous amount of flight speed from there. Okay, we are now in a different zone. So let's come over here and bring you up. Okay. Saint Marshall. Okay. Alright, this character does have Darkest Night. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just rapid spawn all of these enemies. Just run past them, just get them loaded into the spawn system. Come back this way. I'm going to drop Darkest Night on that beetle. Right. Keep a close eye on Darkest Night here. And And as I come up around this corner, Darkest Night should still be active, and you can still see that I have that burnt beetle targeted off in the distance. Now, the point of Darkest Night at this, because Darkest Night on a tank or a brute is effectively useless as a debuff in and of itself. Well, I've never even boosted it on this character. Okay. And all I've got are... of all the little details that you miss. So I need to get 5 enhancements. Okay. Burnt Beetle is still all the way back there, off in the distance. And now what's going to happen is, as long as Darkest Night is active and going debuffing, every enemy that walks past that burnt beetle off there in the distance will treat Darkest Night as an attack, as a debuff, as a reason to go and attack my character. By doing it like this, by setting a toggle anchor aggro on a character and then going off where that character is not, that character will now be compelled to cut that burnt beetle will now be compelled to come find my brute. And every other enemy that they come across in getting to my brute will also be tagged with, hey, my brute's attacking them. And this way I can just park at a junction, set a toggle on a character who is on an enemy, and then I can pick up more mobs than I would just by standing in this junction alone and letting the patrol paths take those characters over me. I'm basically enforcing more and more enemies to come and find me because they think that I've targeted them or attacked them or debuffed them from a significant difference away. So Darkest Night is very useful for farming. This is how you get farming done fast. It's not going from mob to mob, it's parking and making the mobs come to you. Because what you're seeing right now is all of these enemies are coming up. I'm kind of dusting through the minions. The minions are just dropping, leaving the Louis drop, and then I'm surrounded by bosses. And then when those bosses drop, I get a whole other flood fresh of every mob that could be targeted toward me comes charging towards me. And this is how you passive farm very aggressively. This is why some of my passive farms can outrun active farms by other players, because it's making very good use of how the aggro system actually works, how enemies are tagged to attack the character, how the patrol paths work. This also leads to what's called Junction Storm. And Junction Storm is when you've dusted all the minions, and then you dust all the lieutenants in one blow, and that means that every other enemy who is within range, who can attack you, who is in range to make an attack check, is a boss. And if they have not been able to attack you, and their first roll check to attack you is they're now the only targets, almost every one of those bosses is probably going to, by system calculations, perform an alpha strike, which is their strongest attack. Now, with enemies that do nothing against fire damage, against a character who is soft capped to fire defense and hard capped to fire resistance, Junction Storms aren't really a big problem for her. But this is one of the reasons why Junction Storms often can flatten a character who could otherwise be able to survive passive farming. They can't handle the damage spike that comes from the maximum number of bosses within range, all critical striking at once, because they've all been flagged with, this character is clear, turn and attack. And you can actually go over, substantially over the character. It's sort of like you're only supposed to be able to taunt or aggro like 10 enemy characters at once. But a Junction Storm, you can have up to maybe 20 bosses all turn and fire their attacks at once. I've got some combat logs on records where a successful enforced Junction Storm, and that was a pain in the rear end to create, let me tell you, I had almost 20 bosses all at once, all disobey the rules of the system, and all turn and critical strike at the same time. Uh, so passive farming like this, you can create scenarios that are not supposed to be you're not supposed to be able to create. And I realized we just went off on a tangent there to explain what's going on and why this strategy works, where other strategies don't work. So bringing it back around, this is for farming. Darkest Night is the go-to power. It's the one you really, really want if you're definitely making a farming character. It makes your farming more efficient because you can get more enemies and you don't have to go get them. You, as the player, don't have to put as much work. Now, you have to put in a lot more work beforehand because you need an avatar that can survive having all of these enemies. And you can see in the background as I defeat enemies, suddenly each of those mobs may turn and go, oh, hey, there's a target there, and will attempt to attack. And some of them will attack, and then they'll just pop back out. And this is, again, something where this is basic farming 101. This is how you do it. Now, is Darkest Night so valuable outside of farming? Well, for some characters, very much yes. On Defenders and Corruptors, or any buff or debuff type, Darkest Night is actually very powerful. But on tanks and brutes, it does look like they do have a substantial amount of 2-hit base, minus 10.50% on this brute, base 2-hit on Darkest Night. Now, if you put Darkest Night against a boss, and you have, say, 35% defense, you drop Darkest Night, you're now effectively at 45% defense soft cap. So Darkest Night is very valuable. And the other aspect to it is it also has a minus damage component. It takes away the amount of damage that a target does. So if you are a resist-based avatar, there's a hard cap to how much resist you can get. But with Darkest Night, or a minus damage power, you can take away the amount of damage that your opponent does before they even hit you. So for this reason, that Darkest Night is an incredibly valuable power for, well, a lot of different archetypes. It does something. It benefits every build equally. It benefits defense build because it gives you an extra margin of defense by lowering 2-hit. It benefits resist builds because it takes away the amount of damage that you have to resist to begin with. Now, it doesn't really, you can't really put that much 2-hit buff into it, and I'm kind of looking at this and wondering, has there been a change made to the calculations? Because 15.9% boost, 10.5 to 12.17 on a brute actually sounds really, really high. So I don't know if Darkest Night actually got a buff recently, or if something else has maybe changed behind the scenes in terms of calculations. But as I bring up the extra info here, you can again see why Darkest Night is so valuable on the brute tank types. It can target up to 16 targets. 16 enemies who walk through Darkest Night can all be hit at once. And that's compared to what's our Lotus Drops on here. Lotus Drop targets up to 10 targets. Dark Obliteration does target up to 16 targets. Blazing Aura, well, that's just a toggle click, 10 targets max. Burn, I think, is like 5 targets max. So it's Darkest Night gives you as many targets, or hits as many targets as more targets than your actual attacks. 16 targets. So that again makes it very useful for extra taunting. So it is. That's why Darkest Night is so important. so important to a build. So go ahead and swapping back over. So not having Darkest Night on a resist based character is like, okay, I know from previous experience I don't necessarily need it to survive. Once you hit soft cap, Darkest Night doesn't really bring a whole lot more to the party. I don't need it to survive as this character. I don't really need it for aggro control. What was that? Because I'm not really intending this to be a primary farmer. But that's still kind of... And if I wasn't taking flight, it wouldn't be an issue. Because if I was taking almost any other travel power, I wouldn't go deep to get something that's useful to the travel power set. Speed of sound, like I'd take speed of sound and speed of sound is experimentation. That would be the jab injection. And if I was taking force of will, that would be mighty leap. And I could stack mighty leap with combat jumping. I don't have the slot there, but if I was doing jumping, I'd take combat jumping and super jump. So basically, it's part of this is I'm on any other travel power set, I would not go this deep. I would just maybe take the defense power, combat jumping, and then the actual travel power jump. Or if I was going super, I don't have the, well, I could do super speed since I've got hasten. So I could do super speed, combat jumping, and then becomes a very good question. Well, how would I make up the rest of, well, evasive maneuvers isn't giving me any defense in a fight, so I don't really have to make up that defense anyways. What it's doing in a fight is giving me the air control in a flight, giving me the knock-up resistance. It's giving me practical benefits, even though it's not giving me any actual defense in the middle of a fight. So it's like evasive maneuvers would be droppable, but if I turn off evasive maneuvers and I keep flight and hover, okay, I still actually, because of hover, I do retain. Yeah, hover's like really slow but very precise. You don't really wiggle around. If I just turn on flight, you get the drift while in flight. And we'll find an enemy to smack around for a second. There should be something over here. So afterburner up to make it a little faster. Alright, there we go. Out of afterburner. Let's turn evasive maneuvers on. Alright, with evasive maneuvers on, let's turn evasive maneuvers off again. Attack, and I'm just going to hold right arrow, and it takes a second to ramp up and get away. Attack, hold left arrow, takes a second to get up. Let's turn evasive maneuvers on. Attack, hold left arrow, and you're already up to full speed and moving away. So evasive maneuvers is definitely bringing control to the party and letting you move your character very, very quickly after you have performed one action. Now this is very useful because if I attack this character and then I need to get over there and attack that character, I don't have a delay to go after characters that I need to attack, so I can better position myself retarget, go after targets without having delays enforced by the travel power of the system. So evasive maneuvers is transformative to actually you playing a flight character. And we're just going to turn evasive maneuvers off, so we just have flight and hover. Alright, we got this guy here, and we got those guys over there. So we're going to attack, and then press the forward arrow. And it takes a second to kick in. Attack, attack, forward arrow with evasive maneuvers on. So that change in how quickly it takes to disengage and move over and attack something else really sold me on evasive maneuvers. I almost can't imagine playing a melee character with flight without having evasive maneuvers, because it makes it so much less frustrating to play. Although evasive maneuvers would be the easy power to drop here to go for Darkest Night. Yeah, I'd lose some recharge from losing the luck of the Gambler proc. That's why I'm still kind of banging my head against a brick wall. I don't see a good way. There's nothing I can conveniently drop or readjust without drastically impacting the rest of the survivability of the character to get to Darkest Night. And it used to be with energy melee, you could probably drop total focus or the power that was before it was stun before power crash. Oh, you could totally drop stun and have at it, which I think is how I did it on another character. But with power crash now being a valuable extra power to have, I'm kind of grumping that I can't come up with a way to keep everything that I've got in the build and fit in Darkest Night for the aggro. Alright, and we'll go ahead and bring up combat attributes while I'm standing here, and we'll bring up status effect resistance, knockback free, okay, hide power sources. Alright, so invasive maneuvers is only giving me the knockback resistance when I have a flight power active. Status effect protection, immobilize protection. Hide power sources. And again, it's only giving me when I have a flight power active, so so that's something else that's useful to know. Alright, so it doesn't have Darkest Night. That may make, I don't think she can pull off, I don't think she'll be capable of pulling off some of the stunts that other characters can pull off when it comes to tanking. But maybe. I'm not sure without Darkest Night that she can go toe-to-toe with Recluse. But she doesn't have the energy or negative energy defense to take on Channel Gun natively. So that may be Storm in a teacup. And I really need the fire defense from Superior Frozen Blast. Let's check this. Because if I drop Dark Obliteration and take Darkest Night, do I have any other powers I could... Alright, that's Avalanche. And a full Avalanche would give me Fire Cold and Melee Smashing Lethal. As I work through this. But now I need I'm already using Avalanche in Whirling Hands. So that wouldn't work. Do I have any other powers that are deliberately underslotted? Using Blistering Cold and Total Focus. Got Winter's Bite. Right, even if I freed up those slots, there's nothing I can really sink them into to make up the Fire Cold gap. There isn't, is there? That only gets me right here. 3.13. That only brings me, I still would have 5 Fire Cold defense to make up. I still don't think that gets me anywhere. What do you got? You are ranged. That would also be ranged. That's not enough. Now I'd have to find some place to put you guys. I'm not seeing a path there either. Give me a second while I move the front. And we'll reposition her. Alright, I'm still banging my head against a brick wall. I'm not coming up with a good way. The only way I'm really coming up with to add Darkest Night is to drop Lightning Reflexes. And dropping Lightning Reflexes pushes Hasten down to 133 over 120, and that's even with Agility in play. It pushes Energize to 35 over 30, so now I've got a 5-second delay at best, with Hasten not even perma. That's going to be greater. So the two powers that I could realistically drop to get Darkest Night. The only powers I can really drop are Lightning Reflexes and evasive maneuvers. It's just demonstrated on camera. Dropping evasive maneuvers puts me back to the original problems that I have with using flight in a melee character. Evasive maneuvers just brings too much to the table if you're using fly. And again, if I just swapped power selections, went with a different set, if I went with jump or super speed, then I wouldn't have to worry about going deep. I could just do, if I want a super speed, I could just take super speed because I've taken hasten and do combat jumping, and then I've opened up a slot for Darkest Night. Since the focus of this character is she is supposed to be a flight character, I'm really stuck. The concept of the character is that she's a flyer. Would she need Darkest Night to take on All for One? And I don't know. Okay, and there's a bit more here when you're designing a character in-game versus designing a character or the concept of a character. And we'll go all the way back and reference one of the more ludicrous actions that was taken by Matt Miller, designer, long ago. Matt Miller's character was Positron. Let's head over to Steel Canyon for this. Found his phone gate because I could straight to. Founders Falls. Yeah, I know I have long range transport. I could have used that. We'll do Steel Canyon North. Actually, I don't think I have that many zones unlocked. I don't recall doing that many exploration badges. But we'll check that in a second. Alright. Here's Positron in Steel Canyon. And chat with him. Ask about this contact. I don't actually get a whole lot of details on him. Positron, for each of the lead developers, was supposed to represent an archetype in the game. Like Statesman or Jack was supposed to be the tanker archetype representative. Manticore, Sean Fish, who's actually a really cool guy. He really is. Manticore was supposed to represent the blaster archetype. And Positron here was supposed to represent the defender archetype. And in one of the official canon stories, Positron, a defender, soloed Requiem, a Warshade, an evil Warshade, an arc villain, and a number of players quickly raised their hands and went, hold up, wait a minute, that don't make sense. How could a defender solo, at the time, one of the most notoriously hard to beat down characters that you could fight? And Requiem's available in a few fights. Right now, probably the premier fight where a player can take him on is in Imperious Task Force. And that is not the strongest version of Requiem that I think is available in the game. I think there's another version of him that's brings every single Warshade power to the table, which with the amount of mezzes, stuns, knockbacks, everything that a Warshade that doesn't have to worry about player limitations can advantage themselves of, makes them a freaking pain in the rear end. And a lot of players just kind of raised their hands and went like, well, how can this be? How can Positron mechanically take down Requiem, a notoriously hard to beat enemy? And the response was, well, Positron had enhancements and powers the other players didn't have. And think that through for a second. That there are enhancements, buffs to the characters that the players don't have, but Positron does have. That didn't sit well with a lot of players, but that really was kind of the point of why enhancements can be so transformative, because it was put into canon that there are enhancements that players don't know about. Now, how do those enhancements work? No one. Sorry, I just at this point I just this was one of those moments where it really just it flew all over me. The character does this thing that this character should not be capable of doing. And then later on, okay, player characters manage to make builds where, yeah, there are defenders who can realistically go up against Requiem and kick the guy's tail. Sorry, that just brought on a massive migraine. Anyways, but the other part of that was also important. Powers that players didn't necessarily have. And the concept or the construct was that in-game, players are limited by the amount of powers that they can actually choose. You only get so many powers to make your character. But in a mechanical fight, Positron was using powers that he had the power pool selection for, even if he hadn't actually taken that power. And it was also seen in a couple of the other comics where somebody who might have a patron or a tertiary pool unlocked, they might use a power from that pool that wasn't actually in their in-game profile. And then you'd have from there, you'd also have extrapolations. You'd have, say, a Fire Blaster who has Ice Melee, who's able to combo those powers together and get an antipode kind of attack. Now, there actually is eventually implemented NPCs that actually do this. If we go lore. Lore, Talons of Vengeance. If we go over Talons of Vengeance, detailed info, and they get Harvest Blades, which do fire and cold damage at the same time. So you had characters, you had implementations of synchronicity between powers, where powers could actually combo together to become something more. And this was the extrapolation taken from other characters. Your character in game might be limited by the power selection of what's available, and that's how you base your build. But looking at my energy melee electric here, my character throws energy focused punches, but if she's actually in a fight outside of City of Heroes, would she be calling out energy transfer every time she uses energy transfer? Probably not. And this is the difference between mediums and when you're telling a story or when you're playing a different kind of game. City of Heroes works as a game because everything is, you have to synchronize with lots of different players. So synchronizing the powers separately into canned animations with defined playbacks makes it much easier, or makes it possible even, to make your character appear like you want it to appear to other players. And it's part of the background tech of this is how the game functions, this is how the game works. But outside of the game, if this was an energy melee electric armor, would my character, if they entered another world, be limited by the power selections? Would they not be able to use a Bone Smasher? Would they not be able to use Barrage? Would they not be able to use Power Sync? Would they not be able to use Power Surge because I didn't select those in game because I didn't have the power selection slots to get those? Well, probably not. This is how a lot of players eventually viewed City of Heroes, and that is representative. It's not literal. Is you represent the powers, the kind of powers that your character would take. And if you take that character into a different medium, you would have different implementations of those powers. You'd still be an energy melee. The basic construct of you're wrapping your fists in energy and you're punching raw energy at something, or you're throwing raw energy at something, doesn't change, even if you're no longer naming each single attack. It's just representative of what your character can do. That in turn means that you can combine things that are not possible in City of Heroes as a game, your character would logically be able to do if those limitations were removed. Let's say that, I have flight on this character. If I have speed of sound flight, Afterburner greatly increases your flight speed. I mean, I could realistically, in a different game with these kinds of powers, I could use flight to enhance my punching power or my kicking power. I could activate Afterburner, ramp up to maximum speed, target an enemy, and then do a power crash with my feet into their face, just a big old drop kick. And that's something that this character would logically be able to do. I have Soul Mastery. I have Gloom. I have Dark Obliteration. If I was outside of the game and I've already unlocked these other powers, if I am a Soul Mastery, a Dark Magic user, of course I would be able to make an effect like Darkest Night, even if I didn't actually take Darkest Night in game because of the limitations of the game's world. So, coming back to, would this character have Darkest Night if facing off against My Hero Academia's All for One? Yeah, she may not have Darkest Night as is understood within the game, but she would definitely be able to do something, have an effect of clouding the opponent using the Soul Mastery components. So that's an important distinction to make, in that your character may not necessarily be defined by these specific limitations. And if I was, if I really wanted to make Darkest Night part of a character, I might go and swap her into Sorcery. And we'll actually, Bravo. Okay, give me 1 second. And Black Zor Charlie. And we will do Sorcery, Mystic Flight. Alright, it does cause me to lose Hover. And no good way to make it back up. Alright, so it actually didn't go quite like I That doesn't get me. That's interesting. All right. And give me 1 second here while I make because I can get how many I got 3 slots to work with. Okay. What all did I lose? I lost a Kismet and I lost a Look at the Camera. So I need to pick up a Kismet. And then we're going to change things around. Okay. 2 slots. I'm actually going to change things around. I need to keep you like this. Okay. Do I have? Yes, I do. Let's bring you up. Save as. Here. All right. Okay. Here we go. Let's move this over so we can see. Okay. If I gave up on having the flight control, and I was making a character to specifically have flight, just any kind of flight, not mechanically flight, but have flight and have Darkest Night to have use in a fight, it would probably look something like this. Now I am missing hover, so I'm not picking up smashing, lethal, fire, cold, defense. However, I've got Darkest Night, and Darkest Night does give me a, lock it off, a 14.27. And this is what I was talking about earlier. The base is 10.5, and I've got in two hit recharge endurance. If I take this up to say be just 2-hit debuff, maximize it so we're into yellow soft cap, I've only gone to 15%. I'm not getting a large return for sinking enhancements into 2-hit debuffs, at least not on this character. So if I'm up against an enemy and I've hit them with Darkest Night, I'm still effectively against anything that doesn't resist 2-hit into smashing lethal, fire cold, AoE, soft caps, based on 2-hit reduction. So if I was making a build to be representative of having these, and now this character goes a slightly different way, and again, in that we picked up Spirit Ward, which we can throw in an ally. Now, if we have somebody else fighting with us, then now they're picking up Spirit Ward. We can counteract the effects of Decay on that player. And we've also picked up Inflame. Now, again, mechanically, this is so I still have a place to put the Superior Frozen Blast that I launched from Dark Obliteration. But now we can toss Inflame on a teammate, and now they're doing extra damage. So this would be a way to make a character who has Darkest Night in City of Heroes that still gets almost to the point as the other approach. So that's just, again, the whole point of this digression was representative powers versus non-representative powers. Hang on, I'm taking a stay. Question. Anyways, so that's if you really wanted Darkest Night, and if I was making a farming character who was just going to stand in the middle of a farm, this would probably be the basis by which I would approach it. Now, I would want to shore up the rest of that fire cold somehow. And the easy way to do it would, well, no. Again, really wouldn't work. I don't have enough slots. The thing is, I would probably sacrifice, say, Unbreakable Guard, instead of going for the melee. And we'll just do a quick example here. Let's bring this window back up. I would probably, okay, we're on Conductive Shield. First, let's do a slots. Auto arrange all slots. Gets our tough, not looking so bad. We will drop a slot from Conductive Shield. And we will swap to Aegis. And we'll do Resistance Endurance. We'll check. We've got no proc here. We would actually probably come down and change this to the proc. And come over here. And resist endurance. Resist endurance recharge. Resist. Alright, we've got a slot free. What could we pick up very quickly? With a free slot. We could pick up some regeneration. We could pick up some recovery. Actually, if we just take the toggle off of here, slots enhancement, slots auto range on slots, on Darkest Night, pick up recharge endurance, and okay, this actually maximizes our 2-hit debuff, and now we can see we're at 16.5. And if we check our totals, we are now back at Fire Cold soft caps. We're no longer at melee soft cap. And what's Energize look like? Energize has a recharge time of 34 seconds. Hasten has a recharge of 129 seconds. Again, this is with agility up and in play. So we're nowhere near perma on either. But this gets us to a point where this would be more of a farming capable character. Now, again, I would not want to play this because Mystic Flight would drive me nuts on the animation delays and drifting. But it does. This also kind of maybe hews closer to the concept of being able to teleport around because of Mystic Flight's. What is it? It's down here somewhere. Probably not going to be a selectable power. Because of Mystic Flight's inbuilt teleport, I forget what it's called. Lock it off. Translocation. So it kind of hews more closer to the concept of what I started out with wanting combat teleport. And again, this would not necessarily be a build I would make, but this I think gets closer to addressing the having Darkest Night in a build that gets close enough. But I think this would be a little bit more problematic to play. It's going to be far more reliant on dropping Darkest Night to stay in smashing lethal soft caps and against melee soft cap. Now, once you drop it on an enemy and you're in melee soft cap, but I would rather have those soft caps outright than be relying on a toggle debuff to carry them. Okay. So, I think that actually finishes off the digression down to, oh no, I forgot Darkest Night. Alright, so with the build that I've selected to go with, R1 Bravo, which I think fits more how I envision the character mechanically reacting, mechanically behaving. Alright, so we're sticking with the R1 Bravo, at least for this character, even though we have explanations and builds on how the character would otherwise appear and perform. Wow, we've gone over an hour on these digressions. So I probably should stop at some point and get some food. So let's finish leveling up. And we can do that here at Valkyrie. Change to a new level of power. We're at 48. So we're finishing Dark Obliteration out. And now we just need maneuvers. Alright, last power. What am I missing? What am I missing? Oh, hasten. Speed. Alright, so hasten needs 1. Maneuvers needs 1. I don't know even, since I'm going to respec this very quickly anyways. Oh, his maneuvers. Yeah, since I'm about to go do a respec, it really doesn't matter. Let's go sell off all the enhancements that I'm sitting on. Alright. What I'm actually considering right now is, because we have shot over an hour and an hour and 20 minutes, that I'm going to go grab some food and come back and finish the slotting later, so that anyone who's browsing through isn't necessarily looking at multi-hour long build theory. So we'll be back later, and hopefully I will sound